noches, good evening. I am here at Tía Chucha's Culture Center. I consider Tía Chucha home. It is the place that published my first two books, Unfinished Portrait gorgeous space. I think this is the vision that Trini and Luis had, to have something like this, to this space, this magnitude, and just beautiful and vivid. So I am very honored to be here live, and also obviously due to technology, the wonderful part of technology, also out there with whoever is here listening and watching. I am going to read poems from the new collection, but I'm also going to read from my previous collections, so because I think it definitely makes sense. And in that process, in the next 30 minutes or so, I want to read poems almost in a very chronological order, if that makes sense, about me. So the first one is Garcia Folklore. Located between the boundary of the Atlantic and Caribbean Ocean, a tide swept the 2-year-old child, commanding her body like an ancient sacrifice. The young mother disagreed, for the child had many lands to explore, stories to pen, books to read, hearts to collect, stories to learn. Swooping the breathless infant from the ocean's hands, she saved the child, but the bones in the mother's back always remind her of the day she fought the ocean and won. Hi. Sorry, Luis just got here, which is amazing. And Ramiro, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien.
Muy bien, muy bien. Gracias. Well, you just missed one poem. That's it.
Oh,
it's okay. I know, boy, you're already behind. So yeah, I wanted to open up with Garcia Folklore because I was born in Puerto Rico, and even though I've only lived there 4.5 years of my life, I spent almost every other summer or every summer there until the age of 10 or 11. And Puerto Rico is still home to me regardless of where I go. And my grandmother still has a house there. And so physically, there's still a home. And obviously spiritually, I'm connected to it. So, and since that was my first foundation, I just, to me, it makes sense to start off with a couple of poems from Puerto Rico, and this one, Garcia Folklore, is because my full name is Luivette Resto Garcia, actually, which we don't really use those two last names in the States, but my birth certificate says Luivette Resto Garcia, and so I wanted to honor my mom and her family in that poem. The second poem I'm going to read is Heirlooms. I didn't inherit everything from my mother. Never runner-up of Miss Aguas Buenas, danced in white go-go boots, sang background with El Gran Combo, teased men with cascading iron straight hair. I inherited a temper, quick and malign. I collected metaphors and similes like $2 bills, while she created new wardrobes out of self-drawn patterns and bargain bin fabric. On February Sundays, her finger crocheted baby blankets, scarves, matching hats and gloves for the -5 wind chill factor. She tried teaching me how to double stitch, but my holes were uneven like my voice when I told her no for the first time. I inherited a love for cooking tostones. Her handwriting on an index card instructs me when to turn the plantain over. A monthly therapist bill became my heirloom when her depression passed down to me like diamond earrings. Years later, I would be expecting a daughter, savoring the cotton of my sweater with my fingertips, imagining my daughter's hair that's soft and what she'd inherit from me and her abuela. But my mother's thin smile looks back at me when I see teenage pictures of myself, the slight imperfection of her nose in a profile, reminiscent of the mother who abandoned her as a child, as I wonder about my mother's heirlooms. Thank you. Thank you. The collection really, when Edward asked me a couple of months ago, so can you provide a synopsis of the collection, that was really hard. And I thought it would be far easier than that, so I really procrastinated on giving him an answer. But the thing I kept coming back to is that this particular collection was probably the most personal. I really delved into what we inherit from our families, from our communities, and not just the physical things, not just like my mother and I look very much alike. Everybody sees us, we know that we're mother and daughter. So there is an imperfection to our noses, and my ears are my grandfather's and things like that. But then there's also stuff that we inherit, things that are not tangible, like depression, alcoholism, and maybe even the way we laugh, right? And so I just really delved into that in this third collection, because I was really, and being a parent really triggered that urgency. I was very, very scared when I found out I was having my daughter, because of all of the mother-daughter issues that I grew up with and was traumatized by. So when I had sons, I was like, well, I have no frame of reference. So I went into it like, okay, we can do this. But when I found out I was having my daughter, I really was having a moment of like, okay, I don't want to recreate stories, from our past, and I don't want to pass that down to her or any of them. So you'll see that a lot in the collection as we proceed. This one is called Like Mother, Like Daughter. The blend of Newports and wine on my breath remind me of my mother as I light my next cigarette, holding it the way she does, poised and ladylike when she holds court during unsanctioned smoke breaks. Curve my left eyebrow like her when I hear bullshit pickup lines or excuses masked as reasons. Talk with my hands as I spew Spanish curses at NASCAR-worthy speed. We hold our vulnerabilities like we hold back our tears, with purpose and protectiveness. Smile when we really want the earth to swallow us whole. Enjoy the silence of solitude a bit too much, perhaps. Dream to be a starfish because, like comic book heroes, they possess regenerative superpowers. Like the intersections of a Venn diagram, we share the shame of early pregnancies, disgust for tolerated slaps to the face. But today I rewrite the plot of our lives, flicking ashes on the ground, knowing we will be them one day. And this one is called The Legendary Legs of the Rodriguez Women. Rodriguez is my mother's name. So no biasness, right? But my mother's full name is Carmen Garcia Rodriguez. And so again, thinking about what we inherit, and so supposedly my mother has her mother's legs, and therefore I have my mother's legs. So it's how we all have the same, and I actually met her mother, her biological mother, and it's true, like there is this huge resemblance. Even with my mother's half-sisters, they all have the same legs. So I was really just, I was thinking about that, like I said, a lot, about inheritance. And so this is called The Legendary Legs of the Rodriguez Women. Unequivocal with his observation, a New Orleans accent and a smile, the stranger comments, "Nice stems," quickly passing by my shoulder, creating a small, breezy respite from the stale heat. My cheeks responded in gratitude with thoughts of my mother and the legendary legs of the Rodriguez women, mythical like Ithaca and Helen. The genetic heirlooms from a grandmother I never knew, as 1970s pictures framed in sunflower yellow document my mother standing on beauty pageant stages in stilettos with an audience of wishful suitors and envious women. Instinctive like writing names on wet sand, I touch the brown flesh and muscles below my knees. Wonder if Carmelita ever thinks of my mom or me when she inspects the varying blues of veins, slips on silk stockings, dances to Tito Puente, wades in the water we call home. So yes, and like I said, there's things that I delved into pretty personally, and things again like inheritance, not just from our biological parents, but also from step parents as well. And this one is called Nomenclature. I think I pronounced that word correctly, right? English teacher, Alex?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And and the reason this one's written this way, or where this came from really quickly, is because I noticed in therapy, my therapist called me out on this. I call my mother by her first name, Carmen, when I start talking about negative things that happened in the past. So when I start referring to anything traumatizing. In my childhood, I call her Carmen, but then I call her Mama in other times. So she noticed the shift one time. She said, when you talk about this, you say this. And that got me thinking. So this is where this stems from. Carmen is her name when I flash back to red handprints on my thighs for dropping a plate of rice and beans. It was Carmen's hair I pulled back over the toilet bowls. Carmen's body I laid to sleep. Mama wiped tears off my 4-year-old face when the number 42 bus never showed during a blizzard and I had to miss kindergarten for the first time. Luis is his name when asked, "Where does your father live?" And like a press secretary, I reply, "He chose to stay on the island." His decision become confessions as we overlook the foliage of El Yunque. I see my face in his, silently hoping it's the only thing we share. Papa would have followed me like a character in a Tolkien novel, but Luis chose the women in Basilón over me. Joseph is his name when I talk about his wife and other life across the George Washington Bridge. Joseph when my children and I are shooed away because how does he explain 3 brown nietos to white coworkers? Dad is the stepfather who called me baby bear on Sunday morning phone calls, danced with me at my Sweet 16, gave me away at the altar. Pseudonyms detach them from the people they are and the people I need them to be.
Okay.
So, yeah, that one was fun to write. Yeah. So I have kids now, and I was talking about them for a long time, and a lot of you know my kids. And my youngest son is graduating tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, yes and no. I'm gonna be a mess by like 6:30, I think. And it's bittersweet. He's 13 and he's gonna be going to boarding school in the fall with his other brother and sister. And so having an empty home in a few short months is quite a lot to process. So, as my therapist says, I'm grieving. And I've been grieving for almost a year now, getting ready, and now the grief is kind of amped up a bit. And this next poem is dedicated to them, literally. It says, for my revolutionaries, but it also is Joaquin's favorite poem. So because he's not here, he's off enjoying his last day of school. This is for him and for my children. It's called Someone's Mom. And there's like a little reference here to Don LaFontaine. I always tell people, like, does anybody know who Don LaFontaine is? Do you know Don LaFontaine? I thought you would know. Don LaFontaine is, he did movie voiceovers for years. So there was only like 2 movie voiceover people for like decades. I didn't know this. There were only 2 people. They were basically it. And Don LaFontaine was one of them. So when he passed away, there was this whole tribute to him, and then people realized, like, oh wow, he literally narrated so many of the movies we saw as children, and there were only 2 people for the longest time, and he was one of them. So like, if you go watch movies from the 70s and the 80s, and you hear a voice going, "In a world of tomorrow," that's him. That's that guy.
You should be the next one.
Huh?
You should be the next one.
No, man, we're good. So when I'm a nerd, right? So when I hear about like little things like this, I'm just like, I geek out and I go down the rabbit hole, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe
I'm
it was
afraid
only...
you're more of a nerd than I am. I didn't know that.
There were only 2, and there was only men that were really the ones who did it for the longest time, and now we have women who are who do movie voiceovers. But that wasn't the case. It was Don LaFontaine, and there was another actor who I can't remember right now, who also was the other guy. Anyway, Someone's Mom for my revolutionaries. In my mind, Don LaFontaine narrates the beginning of every morning. In a world full of dentist appointments, field trips, asses to wipe, lunches to pack, homework to sign, one woman's name echoes through Rocky Mountain laundry piles of Angry Bird underoos and Hello Kitty jeans. One woman answers to the call of mommy. A technicolor of communist color dresses, Yankee caps, Converse sneakers, and one faded I Hate People t-shirt, proudly worn at PTA functions and children's museums, occupy the closet where nothing pastel or animal print is welcomed. Morning dance breaks to the Beastie Boys are mandatory, like syrup on blueberry pancakes, with a bacon smile and whipped cream eyes. a mid-afternoon glass from my favorite bottle of wine, and a sippy cup with the words, "Mommy juice, don't touch." Sound like a Dora the Explorer episode asking for things in 2 different languages. Say darn when I stub my toe, but scream motherfucker when another parent cuts me off at the drop-off lane. I pretend to change my name to Queen Sheba of the desert, plugging my ears from 3 voices and monsoon of questions. How I wish to respond, no, I don't know why ants are that small, and who cares, they're ants. Forget them. Watch me take advantage of their size with this chancla. Darwinism at its best. On Columbus Day, I teach them about hubris, genocide, and respect for the property of others. On New Year's Eve, write each of them a letter of the obstacles they conquered, new games they mastered, colors they discovered, the lines they stayed in, the boxes they thought out of, new lessons they learned in and out of the classroom, like opening the door for anyone, or the power of listening, especially when a grandparent speaks. With each passing year in the surreal lands of Marqués and Paz, I challenge patterns etched in the knots of our family tree, carve new ones in the extended branches with smiles instead of tears, hugs instead of raised hands and voices, break traditions of alcoholism and apathy with Lego hammers, take them to bookstores, show them mommy's name on a spine so they know guidance counselors can be wrong, and how anything is possible.
No.
Yeah. So they graduate. The youngest one graduates tomorrow. And now that I have a 17-year-old son, conversations are getting more and more profound. And Luis, you know this as a parent, like the older they get, it becomes easier, but not so easy. And you know this too, right? And so this very, very tiny poem stems from a conversation I had with my oldest son, and I think this is basically word for word. Breakfast conversation with my oldest son. Another man shot today, Mom. I don't think I ever want a license. Driving isn't the problem, mijo. Driving isn't the problem. So, thank you. Thank you. But yeah, true conversation that happened with Antonio. And this poem is Sophia's poem. And it's called Today Another Woman Painted My Daughter's Nails. Today another woman painted my daughter's nails. Metallic pink reflecting off 7-year-old hands once gripped my index finger as I fed her 1 a.m. meals. Naturally tan hands disappearing into my palm when I kissed them goodnight. Hold onto mine as she climbed stairs. Today another woman decorated my daughter's nails with the first color to adorn her 17-inch body. Fingertips held by another who never contributed to the creation of my daughter's perfect 10 fingers, 10 toes. Never wiped off tears and kissed skinned elbows when my daughter thought she was the Latina Evel Knievel, defiantly zooming down hills on her scooter screaming, "I can do it, mama." Today, another woman painted my daughter's nails. But tomorrow I will paint her future with a rainbow of my learned lessons about strength that rises after a cry, the necessity to sing off key at least once a day, and trusting manicures who offer more than just pink. So yes, so those wonderful things happen, being a parent, and then other things that are not so great, right? Actually, realizing, like I mentioned in the other poem, again, the inheritance part, and a lot of this deals with family. And one of the things I did for myself in the spring of 2015 is actually meeting my biological father again, and not seeing him physically for probably about 15, 17 years, and realizing that I needed to have that conversation with him as to why he left. Like, I needed to get straight answers, as a grown woman already, but I still needed to know. And so I knew that if I wanted to grow as a person, I needed to have this conversation, and it needs to be had in person. So I went to the island just for that, and no other reason. So there's a couple of dad poems in here, father poems, and this one's called Promises Are Coffee. It's Wednesday, and I asked my father if he can mail me 2 packages of coffee from Puerto Rico. My request is specific and desperate. It has to be cafe crema. Abuela worked for the company until she retired in her late 40s. In between meetings, she created my name on her desk pad. I can't find this brand in the States. I ask my father, and he quickly promises with a sí, sí, por supuesto. And I reply with gratitude like a daughter would, forgetting the cardless birthdays, the chances I gave away like bendiciones at the end of a phone call, and the afternoons where I waited and waited like a daughter would. But today, he promises coffee, knowing how much it means to me. And I believe him like a daughter would, because this is the kind of coffee that can only be found on the island, just like him. This one's called Botswana Beats and Bushmen. I think it's pretty self-explanatory when you hear it. At the art exhibition, she overhears a conversation between the curator and an art buyer, a clinical psychologist, who has returned from her annual trip to Botswana, where the Bushmen extract trauma from the body and spirit with dance around a fire warmer than blood. The eavesdropper closes her eyes and her feet move up and down to an imaginary drum beat. Ball to heel, heel to ball, ball to heel. Memories of a father forgetting to pick up his daughter on a typical humid Sunday afternoon, the itchy blue taffeta dress incubating the seeds of rage and resentment. What man will love her if the first one in her life doesn't? Memories of mom's car keys taken away when she forgot she was the parent after 3 rounds of Long Island iced teas. The eavesdropper needed the beats of Botswana created from the hands of healers, trapping memories in a circle of fire and music where case studies don't exist. Right. Unfortunately, in 2013, going back to family, in 2013 I lost my tia. She's my mom's only sister, and so my mother, for those of you who have siblings and you only have one, imagine losing that one sibling unexpectedly. So my mother to this day is extremely distraught because they were going to retire together. That was their plan, you know. And so I miss my tia quite a lot more these days. So I decided to write her this elegy, and this is dedicated to Diana Garcia. I never wanted to write you this kind of poem. I hope to write you an ode, praising the taste of your rellenos de papa that no one else can make without them crumbling into hands like chalk, or the way strangers confused us for mother and daughter in the summertime. In your eyes, I was always a precocious toddler raising the volume of your stereo as you practiced shorthand for the next secretary exam. The result of baby babble, tatan, was your name instead of tia or titi, an only child with only one tatan, who cursed best in limited English. You taught me the best way to serve a volleyball, exchange off-color Spanish jokes like a teenager, yelled my name across bodega aisles. I missed the last decade of your life, not knowing would be the last, and funeral collages become memories I had forgotten. I never wanted to write you this kind of poem. I thought I would have more time to write you an ode. My mom, when she got this book a couple months ago, like whatever, a few weeks ago, I was really scared about her reading it. For those of us who are writers and we write about our families, you know this, all of us know this. It's good to get it out and it's cathartic, but then there's always a fear of like, how is it going to be received and what's the backlash? And so I really didn't even tell her, by the way, that this book came out. Like, I didn't tell her. Her and I speak every Sunday, and she asked me recently, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to get my photos taken. Well, for what? I said, well, I need new photos because the book is coming out. Oh, you have a new book? And so she bought it right away, and I, I did not bring it up in conversation, but she did, and she said that poem about my tia was her favorite one, and she said she read it over and over again. So that made me feel really good to know. And then again, growing up here, being a bilingual person, it's hard. I feel like it's sometimes I don't know, I haven't reconciled the idea of being like from Puerto Rico and then growing up here, it's just, I know Spanish. I was able to speak Spanish to you for a little bit, right? But I can't write it. I can't write it well enough, right? And I know I can't read it. Like, I can't read novels or things like that without definitely like looking up words and stuff. So this one's actually the title of the book, Living on Islands Not Found on Maps. I live on an island not found on maps, growing up in the shadows of one of the most popular surnames, Garcia. I speak Spanish to my abuela on Sundays, but rely on Google to help my children with their homework because the accent rules never stuck. Stress or unstress? Penultimate syllable? Took the paradoxical college course, Spanish for Bilinguals, where every Tuesday, Professor Cruz de Jesus would shake his head with indignation at my use of the familiar tú versus usted. No me conoce, he said. He was right. He didn't know me, and I didn't know him, or the proper word for bus or orange juice. What I did know is summers in Puerto Rico eating quenepas as relatives ask, ¿No entiendes lo que dijo tu primo? And my abuela, defending my tongue. This tongue colonized not once but twice, leaving me isolated at family reunions, feeling inadequate for my inability to conjugate on command, sounding out storefront signs while riding the number 42 bus on the way home from kindergarten, where I concentrated to understand Mrs. Farrell's lessons about the seasons. But I finally found a home between Bronx bodega aisles, code switching with my homegirls about how many times Juana bipió that boy we saw standing in front of el building. This became the island where I belong, unfettered and absent of red pen corrections. Juana didn't care if I used the tú or the usted, or if my yo was about me, or an emphatic reaction to her crazy story. This island didn't care if I rolled my R's or ever got the purpose of vosotros. An island where our bodies translated feelings, pursed lips, a raised brow, an aggressive eye or neck roll. We were bilingual neologists, inventing new lands we could carry in our Timbs and bubble coats. Here, language like us wasn't disappointing or broken. Yeah, I think a lot of people can, if you're bilingual, or you vacillate between those worlds, I think you can understand where that comes from. And it's something that, and now, being a parent and having to help my kids with Spanish, I'm limited. Like, when they come ask me, well, what's the imperfect? And I'm like, I don't know. What's the command? I'm like, I don't know. We're gonna have to look that one up. I don't know. And I actually wanted to read just 2 more poems probably. And like I said, I wanted to read from the previous collections. I wanted to read from Ascension. Again, really focused on family today, or tonight. I wanted to read a poem about my abuelo. He's 87 now, and unfortunately the last few years he hasn't been very mobile. He had some strokes and has kind of left him not really participating in this world in the way that he used to. And he really is the only father figure I had growing up, right? Just there was no real consistent father figure except for Pedro, abuelo. And so this is dedicated to him. And this is true. He had a bodega for a long time. I grew up in a bodega. So this one's called Pedro's Bodega. The 9th grade was too hard for him, so he left and moved to Nueva York. $50 one-way airline tickets made him special. No boat, bus, or train for him in his dream. He flew back and forth over the oxidized icon of freedom, her 7-point crown, broken shackle feet, and the Emma Lazarus poem he could not read. The first bodega opened in the South Bronx on St. Anne's, home of quarter water, Malta, Budweiser, and banana-flavored Now and Later. In the 90s, he moved her to Parkchester, 1 block from Ortiz Funeral Home in the 6th train. Across the street, a beat-up door with no address masked as the headquarters for a numbers game. 10-year-old children ran back and forth with a bet, a 20, and strict instructions from their mothers to come back with a receipt and luck. Young vets who missed the Vietnam War by that much hung outside until 1 a.m., held their own ice-cold interpretations of a brown bag lunch, talked trash about each other's beer bellies, thinning hair, dead-end jobs, old ladies, collectively paused to admire the Valdez's sisters in their high school uniforms buy groceries for their family. At 3 p.m., anxious children bombarded the arcade like ants on cotton candy, waiting to see who would beat the latest top scorer in Centipede, feeding games with quarters and their stomachs with pork rinds, white joysticks covered in the residue of nuclear orange processed cheese powder. Women with blue hair and dark moles with that one piece of hair on it gossip about Don Feli's hands getting cut off on the deli slicer. The cheeseman began with 30 stitches, but by closing, when Pedro let the iron gate touch down on the broken cement, Don Feli's hand had to be amputated. Thank you. And this is from my abuela, who is 94. She's really special to me. She's the one who got me. She's the reader in the family. My mom is not much of a reader, and she loves to read, and I grew up watching her, and she really pushed me to focus on my education. She made sure that I didn't lose my Spanish, and she would force me to read everything, even like the gossip columns from like TVA or something like that. Everybody knows what TVA is. And I think she's a really special lady, because technically she's not my grandmother. She's actually my great aunt. My mom's mom abandoned my mom, and that's the Carmelita in the other poems. Carmelita left my mom and my tia at the age of 2 and 1, and left them with my grandfather. So for those of us who can process this was 1958, 1959, and said, okay, I don't want to be a mom here. So you can only imagine when my grandfather, who's like probably 23 years old, limited education, has no idea what to do with 2 girls on top of that on an island. So he asked his sister, Maria, who was single, educated, and was, because the other sister was married and living in Jersey, would you raise my children with me? And without hesitation, she did. So this woman became my mother's mother, even though technically that's her aunt. And there was no second guessing this. So what I love about my grandmother is that she did that not once but twice, because when my mom got pregnant with me, there I was, and my mom was not ready to be a mom. And she said, okay. And she did that to me, she did that for me, she did that for her sister's kids when her sister caught breast cancer and had to go to chemo. She had 3 kids, she took over and took care of them. So what I really love about her is that I remember a few years ago, we were all together, just a long time ago, and we realized in the kitchen that she had raised every single one of us. Yet she never had children of her own. She had to have a hysterectomy at the age of 40. So she never gave birth. But yet she raised literally probably 7 kids from bottom to top. And her name is, on top of her name is like Maria Virginia. She has like a very like Spanish name, like Maria Virginia Garcia Lozada, So this is why I wrote this poem for her. And she's also uber Catholic. Okay, she has like the bust of the Pope and John F. Kennedy. I grew up in the household. There's Pope John Paul II and JFK, like next to each other. It's very bizarre. But she loves her popes. Hail Mary. This is called Hail Maria for Maria Virginia Garcia Lozada. Because when your baby brother knocked on your door, you promoted yourself from aunt to mother without hesitation. And when cancer took your sister's left breast, you set the table for 3 more children. Hail Maria, because when a ring was put on your finger, you declined. You already had responsibilities in the name of Carmen, Diana, Norma, Jose, y Melba. And when an unexpected grandchild was placed on your lap, you made sure she was loved. Hail Maria, because when your mother lost her independence, you washed her body every night. And even though your womb never felt the pain of birth, your heart felt the anguish of a parent. Hail Maria, because when you were born, you lived up to the prophecy of your name. She's amazing. She did get engaged. She was engaged. She was engaged. She was involved with someone. I don't know. He was gonna do his residency in Spain, and he said, "Let's go to Spain." And she said, "I I can't go because I have my girls. They couldn't come with her. So he said, no, it's just me and you. And so the only time that she was actually potentially going to be married, she turned it down. And then that was it. So she's a very special lady, in my opinion. And this is from the first collection.
Yay!
Yay, from 2008. This is a long time ago. So, yeah. I think I'm going to read when I first moved here, actually. So it's the last poem of this collection, and then I'm going to close this one. This is when I first moved to LA, back in 2003. There you go. City limits. The sign read, "Welcome to Los Angeles," as I said goodbye to the coquito man pushing his cart on those humid July afternoons, when fire hydrants recreated geysers with the help of a hollow tin can, bodegas carrying cola champaña, blasting bachata boleros, men named Papo throwing wooden dominoes on a table supported by 2 milk cartons, street corner viejos reminiscing about their islands, hoping to return because death and birth begin with her. Heat lamps keeping dollar alcapurrias warm by sweaty cuchifrito windows, admiring graffiti memorials on storefronts, paying homage to slain children, Pope John Paul II, and Big Pun. Feel the rhythm of a 6-train caboose sway me back and forth to sleep. Cheer the Bronx Bombers onto yet another victory series. Jeer a Mets fan for being a Mets fan. Buy a hot dog and a pretzel from the same stand. Hear yo, asshole, and puñeta all in one sentence. Visit the gorillas in the morning. Push my way for a small peek at the Rockefeller tree. Watch the wind encircle the fall leaves into a tornado frenzy. Silently recite the Our Father when I walk by Ground Zero. Touch snow for the first time all over again. So, yeah. There was a little bit of everything, and tonight was more focused on family, more and unexpectedly. I guess I'm thinking about family a lot in the last couple of days, especially tomorrow. So, questions? If anybody has questions?
Yeah, we have 15 minutes, but we could start with the audience over here.
Yes, Ramiro.
Oh boy.
The dashing man in the front with brown.
See, that's it right there. So can you talk about maybe how your kids feel about you being writer poet?
They actually are really funny in a good way. What I love about being a mom and being a writer and then them being part of it is that, and it's kind of weird because I really wanted this when I started when I set out to do this. I wanted being a writer, a poet, normalized for them. I didn't want them to ever feel like that being an artist was unattainable or it could only be a dream. I wanted them to see that, yes, you can do this. And it doesn't have to be a writer, right? Like if one of the kids wants to be a musician, wants to be a painter, wants to be a singer, wants to do anything artistic, I need to set that example that this is possible, that you can do it if this is what you want. And what I love is that because it's so normalized for them, that they're so accustomed to being around creators on a regular basis and just being around art, right? Whether it's museums, bookstores, poetry readings, lo que sea. And that to me is really beautiful, like making that normal. And it's not extraordinary. And exposing them to just all the people that I've been in. I bring them to poetry readings. Like a lot of you know my kids because I bring them since they were little. And I have no vergüenza. I have, this is who my friends are, and I want you to see this. I want you to hear these words. You can't repeat some of them. Like, I remember taking them to a reading regarding Black Lives Matter way back when, and I sat them all down.
The one in Silver Lake.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
It was amazing. And I remember sitting them down, and I remember Luis was there, and I think Ramiro, you were there too. And I remember they were really little, and I said to them, listen, you're going to hear words today that are going to are really grown up words. One, you cannot repeat them, and two, we can discuss them on the ride home. And we had a really good discussion that afternoon or that evening driving home. I took them to Say Her Name reading, which was honoring Sandra Bland and all Black women who have been slain by the police. And that's where I met Bridget Bianca. And on the drive home, they asked me, well, who is Sandra Bland? Like, why was the whole evening dedicated to her? And we had an amazing conversation about police brutality and women, Black women specifically, being targeted. So I think they feel good about it. I feel good about it because, again, it's normalized, and I feel like their lives are richer because of it. And they've been exposed to so many different voices and perspectives and stories that I think that that's really, whether they're cognizant of it or not, that really has kind of morphed them to the people that they are now. And Antonio, who's 17, is a writer. You know, he told me the other day, he's like, I'm hoping to get into the creative writing poetry class in the spring.
Okay.
Right? It's like, poor child. You're going down the road of workshops. Pero no, I mean, just to hear him be excited about, you know, Terrence Hayes, you know? He called, you know, the fact that Antonio, a couple months ago was like, I'm obsessed with this man. And that's amazing.
Tía Chucha Press first published him.
I know, and I told him, I was like, oh my God. And so I think him being obsessed, for example, with Terrence Hayes and wanting to, you know, be a writer for the school newspaper the way he is now. He's an editor, actually, now. He got promoted to editor. None of that, I think, would have been really possible if he hadn't come to these things, right? And, you know, my daughter, in her own way, you know, kills it when it comes to, like, she told me her favorite book this semester was Song of Solomon. And she told me, she's like, I love Toni Morrison. I'm gonna read everything she writes. And I go to the bookshelf. And there it was, you know. So now that they're older, I can see a real tangible consequence of coming to these things since they were like 4. So I think they feel good about it. I think it was a good experience. Yeah.
So, I don't know where to begin with that. I want to say how proud I am of everything you've done. I'm proud of the books you published. I'm proud that we published your first 2 books, Tía Chucha Press. I have to thank Martín Espada, who introduced your work to me. And I tell people this because I get manuscripts from a lot of friends. And I think we publish good manuscripts. I love them all, but not all of them do well. But Luivette is also a big promoter, and she's fearless about who she is, and that's what's important. Because when you see it in the poetry, it's very intimate, but it's also so courageous. There's a lot of courage in you not. I know it's hard to express and expose, but poetry, that's what it's for. And it's dangerous, that's because of that. It's one of those things, but I've always thought that here is a fearless woman who is going to put it down the way she sees it, and we need that. We need more of that, and I know that that's what you always carry. You know, I don't got the words for everything I want to say, but I just want to say how wonderful it is that we were able to publish you and see your growth, and you become so important. And now FlowerSong Press and others, I think, will hopefully pick up the value of what you represent, which is quite vast. I don't have a question other than just say that besides your fearlessness, I think you traverse all the major boundaries of the world. You know, if people knew the history of Puerto Rico, if they knew the migrancy, forced migrancy to New York and Chicago and other places, if they knew the story of colonialism from the island, but also taking it into the United States, if they could understand all that, they would understand a lot about what this country really is. People don't always address that, you know. I think sometimes it's hard for people to look beyond the black and white binary. You know what I'm saying? I'm not against black and white. I'm just saying that's the only binary you can see. The brown people in between, which includes black, includes white, includes a lot of things, are hard to place. But Puerto Rico, the story of Puerto Rico is central to the whole country and our history. And I don't think enough people understand that. And I want to just say how important it is. In Chicago, we lived in a Puerto Rican neighborhood, very vibrant, politically strong, beautiful community that was also very traumatized. And so I can see how people just don't look where they need to look. There wouldn't be hip hop for Puerto Ricans. I get the Black West Indies, I get all the contributions, but it wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't Puerto Ricans, and people don't know that part. People don't talk about it. I just think it's important, and I think your voice also traverses all that because you've been in LA so long that you're really an LA person now. So you represent a lot of that too. I don't have a question. I was gonna say, please keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing and powerful. Your kids will come back. That's one thing I will say. In one form or the other, they'll come back. And even after years in prison, they all come back. But if you need anything, Tía Chucha Press is here. Tía Chucha is the center. Is here. We love your work. You represent the best of us.
Oh. I mean, I said this earlier. I opened up saying that how happy I am. This to me, you weren't here yet, but this is home for me. Tía Chucha is, regardless of the different locations and lo que sea, this is home, and I'm always proud to represent Tía Chucha. And that's why, I volunteered to do the poetry workshop this summer. I'm excited. We're starting that in July.
Oh, good. I'll take it.
We're doing a poetry. Yeah, I'm doing 8 weeks here at Tía Chucha's virtually on Zoom. We're gonna do a poetry workshop for about at least an hour or so. Alex, you remember, right, when there was the women's writer circles?
Oh yeah.
So
it's right up there, right there.
So. Bringing that back, and I remember I reached out and I said I want to volunteer. Let's set this meeting up and having a conversation with Andrea. So I'm excited to give back because Tía Chucha has given me so much. You have given me so much. Trini, your family. Yeah, I mean it just it's family to me, right? That's the way I see it. And I always joke nowadays. I bring up the fact that you call me out. I remember, because I keep saying I live in LA, but I'm from the Bronx, and you're like, shut up. You're from LA already. You've been here for 19 years, and I have to accept that. And I have to admit, the reason that I don't claim it the way that I think that I probably should is because after getting to know so many people from Los Angeles, from the San Gabriel Valley specifically, I don't want to be a poser, right? I think there's a rich history and activism here and culture here. I'm always sensitive to be I don't want to claim something that I was never a part of, right? And I'm a part of it now, but I again, the SGV and how and in the Los Angeles history that you write about, I read it. I wasn't here for it, so I'm always that's why I'm sensitive about it, because I don't want to. I don't want to claim some place that falsely. I don't want to be a poser in that way. But I think after 19 years, I'm from.
But you know how the island is. You're Puerto Rican no matter where you go.
I know.
That will always be the truth. You're from the Bronx no matter where you go.
I know.
But you're LA.
I know I'm LA. I know totally. I can tell. You had a question, sorry.
Yeah. We have a question from High Form Family, which just says, "What was the journey of naming your latest manuscript?"
Say it again.
What was the journey of naming your latest manuscript?
The manuscript went through many iterations, and I think people who ever had to be creators know that you change the title of things maybe more than once. And there were other names. The first name was actually Heirlooms, Inheritance, because I really kept hearing that. I kept coming back to that in these poems. I really wanted to delve into, again, how do we heal, right? We heal, we have to look at our past, and then so we can move forward properly. And that's why I did that's why I went to the island to meet my father, because I knew if I wanted to move forward, I had to confront that past. I had to get my answers, and I had to also let him know that I was angry and that I was hurt, despite of being 37 or something like that. I needed for him to know, you disappointed me. I need you to know that, and hearing it from me. So it was going to be Inheritance, Heirlooms, and then when I wrote the poem, Living on Islands Not Found on Maps, I felt that was the title of the book, because I living in Puerto Rico, and then I know the Bronx isn't an island or anything, but living, from New York City itself, right? And then sometimes you just don't feel like you belong anywhere, and I think we all kind of feel that way at one point or another, right? Where you're just God, I just don't feel like I belong here right now, or in this space, at this party, at this reading, at this workspace, for either a short period of time or a long period of time. And so when that title happened, I was like, this is it. I think this is exactly what. It's a long title, and Martín told me never to have long titles.
Yeah, but he does.
He does. But he did tell me, do you notice how the titles get shorter and shorter? And he's right. He has 20 books. So as his books progress, the titles have gotten shorter, or just one word. Floaters. So he's not floaters. That's it, right? But he did give me that piece of advice many years ago. make sure your titles are short. That's why it's Unfinished Portrait and Ascension. That was very intentional, but this one I broke the rule and it's a little longer, but that's how it came to be. So
We have time for one more question, and it was from John184, which was, what are some steps that you took preparing, if any, when you had to revisit your depression and your trauma?
I had to commit to going to therapy, and I had to tell myself that, like, this is time, like, to commit to it, and not like, you know, okay, I think I'm good now. I'm good. I only need to be here for a couple months. I'm good. I'm cured. Or like, no, I need to commit to it. And I also joined support groups. I did a 12-step program for Codependency Anonymous, which I'm really proud of that I did. I went to meetings. I did the 12 steps. Some of you may be familiar with those 12 steps. They're very similar to the AA steps, actually, and they're just slightly tweaked for codependence. And I was, again, very committed to improving myself. I knew that if I wanted to be a better person, a better mother, a better friend, a better daughter, lo que sea, I needed to do this work. And it was going to be messy, and it was going to be uncomfortable. I was going to cry. I was going to look away a couple of times. I was going to want to run away a few times. And I knew it was going to be painful. But I knew that the result of it would be beautiful, and that I'll be better and stronger, and that I would have learned something from it. So committing myself to therapy, going to Codependency Anonymous, doing the 12 steps, every single one, which took a year to finish, on top of going to meetings. There was a commitment to that. I mean, I did therapy, that, and going to my meetings, and digging deep into it, and still going to therapy to this day. You know, I'm proud of it. I need to go every other week from just my own stability and check-ins, and you know, and the healing never really ends, to be honest. I think that certain aspects are better than others right now, but what I realize is that, you know, certain words, certain conversations, certain songs, certain moments will trigger things, and all of a sudden you're almost right back to where you started. And you have to just then, but the difference is that you have a toolbox now, and you know exactly what to do to get you out of there, right? And you have a support system of friends, and you know exactly what are the healthy things to do for yourself, and what are the not so healthy things. There's that awareness. So, you know, I'm grieving right now. I'm aware of it, but I'm dealing with it in a healthy way, right? I'm talking about it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm writing about it, versus things that I did 10, 15 years ago that were unhealthy, right? So, I don't know. I think that's where I'm at. I don't think healing is ever really done. I think you just kind of, you know, you move forward, but like, treat yourself with better grace.
All right.